بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. أما بعد, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh. Tonight's class is going to be on Sahih Al-Bukhari, the chapter of fasting. And before we commence with tonight's class, everyone please, inshallah ta'ala, try your best to be mindful of the current situation and of the past situation. Unfortunately, for many years now, with our brothers and sisters in Islam in Palestine, we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to grant them both peace and justice. Ameen. And grant them safety and protection, and to grant them victory and triumph, and to give them that which they deserve. Ameen. Alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. That's first and foremost. And as I said before, it's nothing new in light of what's been taking place over the last few days or last couple of weeks, but it's nothing new. It's not a new thing, unfortunately. And that's very disheartening for the Muslim. Also, with regards to the conclusion of the holy month of Ramadan, you're going to try your best to finish as strong as you possibly can, and make sure that you're getting your zakat al-fitr prepared and ready. Bi-idhnillahi ta'ala. Khair, inshallah, last piece of advice is with regards to the moon sighting. Just like we began the month of Ramadan, and inshallah we're ending the month of Ramadan, it is totally unnecessary to fight and to argue and to find fault for or against local versus international sighting. It was unnecessary in the beginning of Ramadan, and it's unnecessary now. So just be mindful of that, inshallah ta'ala, in your classes, your khutbahs, your Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, your posts. Be mindful of that, inshallah ta'ala, not to fight and to argue over these issues. For the Muslims who went with the local sighting, and they started a day earlier or day after, and they have attempted to do that which they believe is most correct, there's no blame upon them. And the Muslims who went with the international sighting, Saudi or other than Saudi, and they attempted to do that which they thought was most correct, there's no blame upon them. Bi-idhnillahi ta'ala. And Allah surely knows best. Alright, chapter number 31 says, باب المجامع في رمضان هل يطعم أهله من الكفارة إذا كانوا محاويج. Chapter 31 is continuation of chapter 30 with regards to a man who breaks his fast while having intercourse with his wife. He makes a mistake, he violates his fast, and he now has to pay an expiation, as we explained. This chapter is dealing with, is it lawful for the man who broke the rules, who violated the rules, to pay the atonement or the expiation by giving it to his actual family members? Instead of giving it to a foreign poor person or needy person, he himself is going to pay and give it to his own family. With regards to freeing a slave, fasting 2 consecutive months, and if a person cannot do that, then feeding 60 poor Muslims. And if a person cannot feed those 60 poor Muslims, whatever charity that he's going to give as an expiation, can he give it to his own family? Is it lawful for him to give it to his own family? The man who violated the rules himself was extremely needy and poor. That's what Imam Al-Bukhari rahimahullah ta'ala wishes to discuss in this chapter. And it's very similar to chapter number 30. He says, حدثنا عثمان بن أبي شيبة وقال حدثنا جرير عن منصور عن الزهري عن حميد بن عبد الرحمن عن أبي هريرة رضي الله عنه جاء رجل إلى النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم فقال إن الآخر وقع على امرأته في رمضان، أو إن الآخرة أو إن الآخرة الله أعلم. فقال أتجد ما تحرر رقبة؟ قال لا. قال فتستطيع أن تصوم شهرين متتابعين؟ قال لا. قال أفتجد ما تطعم 60 مسكينا؟ قال لا. قال فأتي النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم بعرق فيه تمر وهو الزبيب. قال أطعم هذا عنك. قال على أحوج منا ما بين لابتيها أهل بيت أحوج منا. قال فأطعمه أهلك. Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh. It's the previous hadith and the previously mentioned hadith with regards to the man who made that mistake. And the Prophet ﷺ asked him the questions, what can you do? What can you pay? Can you emancipate a slave? The man said no. Can you fast 2 consecutive months? The man said, I don't have the ability to do so. Do you have the ability to feed, alaikum salam, 60 poor Muslims? The man said no. And then the Prophet ﷺ was given a carton or cart of dates, a box of dates. And he gave it to the man, the poor man who broke the rules, who broke the law. And he says, take this and give this as charity. And the man asked the Prophet ﷺ, am I to give it to someone who's more needy than me and my family? No one in Medina is poorer than us. And the Prophet ﷺ said, take it and give it to your family. So the hadith clearly proves the permissibility for a man who breaks this law, who violates this law, to do this, to pay the kafara to his own family, even though that's not how it should be done as the default. That's the main lesson from the chapter and from the hadith. And of course, this hadith and this ruling shows us the mercy of Islam. The mercy of Islam and the tolerance of Islam. That Islam is a soft, merciful way. And it's not meant to punish and to make things unnecessarily harsh upon the people. It's not meant to do that. Punishments are not the default. Punishments are exceptions to the rules. Islam is meant to make things easy for the people and to allow them to perform their rites and their rituals. The mercy of the Prophet ﷺ, and of course, teachers, imams, leaders, fathers, mothers, stepfathers, stepmothers, coaches, life coaches, they need this hadith to look into the Prophet ﷺ's stellar character. How soft and tender he was to someone who was a sinner, someone who broke the rules, right? Let alone to someone who's ignorant or someone who hasn't broken those rules. Hafiz ibn Hajar rahimahullah ta'ala, he says regarding this hadith, وقد تقدم باقي الكلام عليه مستوفا في الذي قبله وقد اعتنى به بعض المتأخرين ممن أدركه شيوخنا فتكلم عليه في مجلدين جمع فيهما 1000 فائدة وفائدة ومحصله إن شاء الله تعالى فيما لخصته مع زيادات كثيرة عليه فلله الحمد على ما أنعم. He says, we previously explained this hadith in detail, and there are some scholars who have made a commentary on this hadith in 2 volumes. And they've reached over 1,000 benefits, over 1,000 different legal edicts, anecdotes, 1,000 different interesting points they've gotten, they received, they extracted from this one hadith. Think about this now. One hadith explained in 2 volumes. Over 1,000 fa'idah, 1,000 fawaid just from this one story. With regards to rules, with regards to adab, akhlaq, etc. Khair inshallah, chapter number 32. Imam Al-Bukhari rahimahullah says, باب الحجامة والقي للصائم. وقال لي يحيى بن صالح حدثنا معاوية بن سلام قال حدثنا يحيى عن عمر بن الحكم بن ثوبان أنه سمع أبا هريرة رضي الله عنه يقول إذا قاء فلا يفطر إنما يخرج ولا يولج. ويذكر عن أبي هريرة أنه يفطر والأول أصح. وقال ابن عباس وعكرمة الصوم مما دخل وليس مما خرج. وكان ابن عمر رضي الله عنهما يحتجم وهو صائم ثم تركه فكان يحتجم بالليل واحتجم أبو موسى ليلا. ويذكر عن سعد وزيد بن أرقم وأم سلمة أنهم احتجموا صياما. وقال بكير عن أم سلمة كنا نحتجم عند عائشة فلا ننهى. ويروى عن الحسن عن غير واحد مرفوعا أفطر الحاجم والمحجوم. وقال لي عياش حدثنا عبد الغالى قال حدثنا يونس عن الحسن مثله قيل له عن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم قال نعم ثم قال الله أعلم. حدثنا معل بن أسد قال حدثنا وهيب عن أيوب عن كلمة عن ابن عباس رضي الله عنهما أن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم احتجم وهو محرم واحتجم وهو صائم. حدثنا أبو معمر قال حدثنا أبو الوارث قال حدثنا أيوب عن كلمة عن ابن عباس رضي الله عنهما قال احتجم النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم وهو صائم. حدثنا آدم بن إياس قال حدثنا شعبة قال سمعت ثابتا البناني قال سئل أنس بن مالك رضي الله عنه أكنتم تكرهون الحجامة للصائم قال لا إلا من أجل الضعف وزاد الشباب حدثنا شعبة على عهد النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم. The next chapter, Imam Al-Bukhari says cupping for those who are fasting. What is the ruling on getting cupped while fasting? Or cupping someone while you're fasting or while they're fasting? What is the ruling on cupping hijama whilst fasting? Does it break the fast? It doesn't break the fast. It doesn't break the fast, but it's disliked. Makruh, should be avoided, should be delayed until the nighttime. What is the ruling on this issue? Tayyib. Here in America in 2021, and the brothers and the sisters that may be watching globally, of course, we have people, Muslims and non-Muslims as well, who get cupped. So they need to know this. Some people get cupped for stamina, for energy. Some people may get cupped for arthritis, diabetes, different ailments, headaches, migraines, sinus, allergies, etc. Right? Let alone the different relatively new or relatively modern medical issues, such as donating blood, getting a blood transfusion, and of course, the COVID-19 vaccine, Pfizer, Johnson & Johnson, and Allah knows best, etc. The different madhabs of the vaccine. Khairan inshaAllah. What's the ruling on this? Or, even simpler than this, losing a great amount of blood. Does it break your fast? You're working construction, you're working as a carpenter, may Allah protect you, something happens with a saw or grinder, you cut your hand, a lot of blood flows out. Is your fast broken or not? Right? Possible or not? Very possible. You're working in the kitchen, you cut yourself. Or you get into a fight. A non-Muslim hits you in the back of your Uber or your Lyft. You park the car, you get out and you scuffle, you have a knuckle. You lock horns with him. Right? You win the fight, but you got a bloody nose now. They landed a lucky one, right, Omar? Quote unquote. Just a lucky one, right? Every dog has his day. They landed a good one on your nose, and next thing you know, you have blood. Or your lip. Right? What is the ruling on losing blood and keeping your fast? Losing blood and keeping your fast. Because all of those things are similar to hijama. With regards to weakness that takes place after the abundance of blood that comes out of your body. Donation, right? Getting cut, whatever the case may be. What's the ruling on that? Khairan inshaAllah. So Imam Al-Bukhari rahimahullah, all jokes aside, he follows his tradition by giving you a mixture, by giving you a hybrid selection of texts, of information. He quotes the Sahaba, what they did, what they didn't do, what they thought, how they felt. He quotes those who came after the Sahaba, the Tabi'un, what they did and what they didn't do. And of course, last but not least, surely not least, he quotes the Prophet ﷺ. And he quotes the different variations of hadiths regarding the Prophet ﷺ concerning yea or nay. Can you get cupped or not while you are fasting? Alright. So, translation states, Alaykum as-salam wa rahmatullah. First and foremost, Imam Al-Bukhari, he makes ta'liq once again, qala li. He quotes here that Abu Hurairah radiallahu anhu, he said, and also something else that I missed, he said, wal qay, vomiting, spitting up. If you spit up, if you vomit, does that break your fast? Intentional vomiting, accidental, a little bit, a lot, you swallow it back, you taste the food, the acid. What is the ruling on having an upset stomach, or a person has to intentionally vomit and spit up? Right? You may have to hide a key or something. You may need to, Allahu Alam, when you may have to what? Vomit. Who knows? Someone may force you to take something, and you spit it out later, Allahu A'lam. Different scenarios that Muslims have to be in. So what's the ruling on getting cupped, cupping, and what's the ruling on a person who spits up, a person who vomits, all right, with regards to fasting, all right? Khair inshallah. So first and foremost, he quotes Abu Hurairah who says, إِذَا قَعَ فَلَا يُفْطِرُ. He says here, if a person vomits, then it does not break his fast. Abu Hurairah's opinion. Not quoting the Prophet yet. Abu Hurairah's fatwa, Abu Hurairah's madhab, is that if a person vomits, spits up, it does not what? Doesn't break the fast. Without any details here. إِنَّمَا يُخْرِجُ وَلَا يُولِجُ. He said, a person who spits up, a person who vomits, is only taking something outside of his body or his system, and he's not what? Taking it in. He's pushing it out, he's not taking it in. So this effort here is showing you the rationale of Abu Hurairah and others with regards to what breaks fast. What breaks the fast? Breaking the fast is something that you digest, something that you take inside, and not necessarily something that comes out. So that's their way of thinking. And also applied to this is the concept of blood as well, etc. Right, move forward. He also says, and there's another version from Abu Hurairah, is that it does break the fast. وَالْأَوَّلُ أَصَحُ. And the first version is more correct. It's more authentic. He traced back to Abu Hurairah. Then he goes on to quote Abdullah ibn Abbas, another companion, of course, and Ikrimah, the disciple of Ibn Abbas, الصوم مما دخل وليس مما خرج, in which they said the same thing. Fasting is violated and broken from that which enters. Fasting is not broken and violated from that which exits. They also had that view. And then he quotes from Abdullah ibn Umar radiallahu ta'ala anhuma. Ibn Umar used to get cupped while he was fasting. This was for a period of time in his life. And then for one reason or another, Ibn Umar stopped. He stopped it. And he would only get cupped, he would only receive the hijama at night time. Right? ثم تركه فكان يحتجم بالليل واحتجم أبو موسى ليلا. And he also means Abu Musa al-Ash'ari who did the same thing. And then he quotes from Sa'd, Zayd ibn Arqam, Sa'd ibn Abi Waqqas, other companions, Salama, is that they did the exact opposite. Is that they performed hijama while they were fasting. Alright? Then he quotes others who said that we used to get hijama, we would be cupped in front of Aisha radiallahu ta'ala anha. فَلَا نُنْهَا. She would see us, she would hear us, and she wouldn't say anything about it. Some of the pious predecessors would receive the hijama in the presence of Aisha. فَلَا نُنْهَا. And we were not forbade. We were not forbidden from that act. طيب. Then he goes on to quote a famous hadith, who the hadith states, أَفْطَرَ الْحَاجِمُ وَالْمَحْجُومُ. Is that the cupper and the cupped have broken their fast. The cupper and the cupped have broken their fast. Khairan inshallah. Then he goes on to quote, the narration of Abdullah ibn Abbas radiallahu ta'ala anhuma, which the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam was cupped while he was in the state of ihram, and he was cupped while he was fasting. Both. Khairan inshallah. Last but not least, it's a narration that goes back to Anas ibn Malik, in which Thabit al-Bunani, his disciple, one of his main students, asked him, أَكُنْتُمْ تَكْرَهُونَ الْحِجَامَةَ لِلصَّائِمِ. He said to his teacher Anas, he asked him about what you guys used to do and think, the companions. Did you look down upon getting cupped while fasting? Was it something that you shunned? He asked him, the companions, during the time of the Prophet ﷺ and the older companions. Anas said, no. No, we never shunned it. We never looked down upon it. إِلَّا مِنْ أَجْلِ الضَّعْفِ. The only problem or issue that we had was a person getting cupped and then being extremely weak afterwards. A person being what? Extremely weak afterwards. So what does all of this mean? How do we decipher from all of this information? It's confusing. It's a lot. It's very simple and it's very easy. Point number one is that there is no consensus that it breaks the fast. They do not agree. They differ on both issues. Specifically the second issue, the hijama, is that there is no agreement of all Muslim schools of thought, is that cupping breaks the fast. So there's already clear-cut what? Difference of opinion. It's khilaf on the issue. With regards to that. That's what we benefit, number one. Number two, we also benefit is that some of the companions who refuse to get cupped during the daytime, it doesn't necessarily mean that they believe that it was haram or it broke the fast. But many of them were afraid that it would weaken them even more. You're already fasting, so you're weak. You're thirsty. You're hungry. You're praying at night, making itikaf, reading extra Quran, making dua, etc. Your body, your health, your system is already relatively compromised. So now you're getting 2, 3, 4, 5 cups taken out of your head or your neck or your arm. It's only going to what? It's going to make you even weaker. And if it's a challenge for you to keep your fast and to do your deeds and your duties, then what do you think? Even in a weaker state. And the same applies to someone being forced to break their fast because they just can't do it. They can't manage it. So therefore, don't do it during the daytime. Don't do it during the daytime. To protect and preserve the fast, but not necessarily saying that it what?
It breaks the fast.
Breaks the fast. Like saving someone from drowning. Many scholars mention an example of this. Someone's drowning in the water. You can swim, whether you're a lifeguard or not. It may be your duty to save that person out of the water. So you're running with your heavy clothes on. You may not have time to take off your clothes, right? You understand how heavy clothes can become when they become wet? You read different stories about people back in the day drowning, slipping, going to fetch water. Why do so many people drown? In this era, in this period, clothing was heavy. They wore wool. If you study, let's take one example of this. Ancient England, back in the day, there are many reports of many women and men dying from drowning. They didn't just die from plague or from this poison or from this war. Many people died from drowning. And those who came afterwards, the historians, they said, why is it such a high gross number of people drowning, especially women? What was so dangerous about drowning? So you look at the different eras, the Victorian era, the Tudor era, etc. There was no running water. People had to go out and fetch water. They had to go out and bring the water back. So going to a brook or a spring or a lake, a river, a pond, a well, oftentimes you have to carry heavy things. It's wet, it's damp, it's easy to slip. And if you fall into the water, you say, what's so hard about getting out of the water? The undercurrents, let alone what? You're having a full frock, right? Long garment. It's heavy, and you don't realize how heavy it is. You may slip on another rock in the shallow water. So it's easy to drown. So someone's in the water drowning. The moment you see that person, you want to save them, you may not have time to do what? Take off your jacket, your turban, your overgarment, your abaya, etc. You have to run in the water and get them. So you running in the water, pulling them out, another human being, full body, weak, etc., pulling them to safety is going to take what? It's going to sap your energy to a large extent. So therefore, a person who saves someone from drowning may be forced to break their fast. Even though going in the water, taking a person doesn't necessarily break the fast. You guys understand this concept here? So many of them held the view that the hijama didn't necessarily break the fast, but it was something which was right around the corner from breaking the fast, like sleeping and passing wind. So understand, to understand why and how they looked at this. Like it's a very important concept with regards to studying fiqh, let alone comparative fiqh, is understanding the rationale, right? Inshallah. So therefore, point number one is that they did not agree. Point number two, the athar that say that they didn't and they stayed away from it doesn't mean that they stayed away from it because it broke the fast. But tawarru'an. They didn't want anything to violate or to harm their fast. All right, we're going to stop here tonight, inshallah ta'ala. Allah surely knows best. We'll leave some time for some questions. Sallallahu alaihi wa sallam wa imamina Muhammad. If I don't see you again until Eid or after the Eid or next Ramadan, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless you all and allow you to have a happy, joyful, joyous Eid. And like I said, don't forget your brothers and sisters around the world, in Palestine and in other countries, not just Palestine, not just India, other countries, not just Yemen and Sudan, other parts of the world as we speak that aren't as fortunate as you. They don't have meat and sauce and rice and bread and salad and juices for the Eid. They don't have toys for the Eid. They may not have a house for the Eid. They may not have water for the Eid. They may not have a clean, safe place to use the bathroom for the Eid. Children may be orphans because their fathers were killed in wars or attacks for the Eid. So as you're happy and as you swipe and spin and have fun, don't forget your brothers and sisters around the world, Arabs, non-Arabs alike, that are less fortunate. And Allah surely knows best.